The film Rocky from 1976 is hands down a masterpiece. I've loved this film for as long as I can remember. And while I normally focus this channel on watching and reviewing films of the 1940s, occasionally I go a little bit more modern. So, 1976, it's still technically an older movie. And, Rocky is a film I revisit on a regular basis. And like any great film, you can watch it and rewatch it, and you'll pick up little things every time. It's just that good. And the last time I watched Rocky, I was really taken by some of the subtle Christmas elements of the film. So that's why I decided to wrap up the year on my channel with a review of Rocky. I'll dig into the Christmas themes a little later into this review. But you know the story of Rocky. It's the underdog, rising up to the challenge of our rival. Now, in this case, the rival is a powerful, charismatic champion who doesn't plan on losing. But Rocky is so much more than just that. Rocky is just a fascinating character study. In some way or another, I think there's a way that all of us can look at this character. We can relate to him. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a quick summary of the film, like I do on this channel. Spoiler free, in case you haven't seen it. But really, you should have seen Rocky by now. Come on, it's a classic. And then I'll offer some closing thoughts and some analysis of the film. And honestly, look, this review is going to be long and meandering. So get comfy, get yourself a drink. And if you drift off, I understand. Here's a quick summary of the film. And again, spoiler free. The story is set in Philadelphia in 1975. We are introduced to the character of Rocky Balboa, played by Sylvester Stallone. He is a small-time club boxer from a poor part of Philadelphia. We get a window into his life, that he's basically living alone. He's in a shabby apartment. He's got a couple pet turtles, and that's about it. And although he boxes, everybody sort of sees him as washed up and without direction. And he also works as an enforcer for a loan shark who understands that Rocky is maybe a little bit soft and won't actually break any fingers to get payments. But because he's a leg breaker like this, we see that is why boxing trainer Mickey, played by legendary actor Burgess Meredith, hasn't really given him a lot of consideration as somebody he wants to coach, because he sees Rocky as just a bum. Well, Rocky is friends with the character Paulie, played by actor Burt Young, who's sort of a gruff character that works in a meatpacking plant. And Rocky also has a romantic interest in Paulie's sister, a very, very shy character of Adrian, played by Talia Shire, who works at a local pet shop. And a fair amount of the film is sort of the development of their relationship together, the romance between the two. Now, Paulie only speaks poorly of his sister and how she's a spinster and so on. Now, it's around here that the world heavyweight champion, Apollo Creed, played by Carl Weathers, he's amazing in this role, finds out that his planned opponent has been injured. And he wants to do something grand in Philadelphia on New Year's Day, the date of the country's bicentennial. So, he's got this showmanship and he's got this flair, and he decides what he will do is find an underdog. And he discovers almost by fluke that there's this Italian stallion, and he is just drawn to that name, and he wants to fight with him for this epic boxing match. Now, the next day, Rocky gets the news from Mickey that Creed's promoter wants to meet with him. Now, Mickey is still disgusted with Rocky at this point of his failed potential. Now, Rocky shows up at Creed's office. He seems to be kind of in a state of disbelief to hear that he's been given this offer to fight the heavyweight champion. He does an interview on TV with Apollo and just seems like a decent Joe who's honored to be given this shot. So later, his loan shark friend gives him some money for his training, but takes his ciggies away. Yeah, no smoking when you're training. Mickey stops by to visit with Rocky and tries to sell himself as a manager that he needs. He's kind of turned around, sees this as a great opportunity, but Rocky isn't having it, and he remembers how Mickey turned him down when he needed a manager, and he lashes out at him in frustration. Well, poor Mickey just kind of shuffles back home. It's a very sad scene in the film, but Rocky kind of has a change of heart, chases him down, and hires him as a manager. Now, the next day at 4 a.m., Rocky starts his training, gulps down the raw eggs, and takes off running. And with difficulty, makes his first run to the top of the stairs at the Philadelphia Art Institute. So he's not quite there just yet. You see, he's really struggling. Well, Rocky visits Paulie at the meatpacking place that he works at. And, Paulie's got kind of an edge to him. He wants to know what his intentions are with Adrian. And it's here that Rocky just kind of lashes out and starts punching a slab of beef. He's got blood all over his fists from this. Mickey continues his training of Rocky and yells at him to keep away from women. And he agrees, although he continues to spend a lot of time with Adrian. Paulie, meanwhile, sets up an interview with the press at the meatpacking plant. And this catches the eye of Apollo's coach. He sees that this Rocky character might be more of a threat than Apollo is anticipating. But Apollo seems just all caught up in his own business. Now it's around Christmas time, and Rocky and Adrian, they're over at Paulie's home. And he comes in just drunken, and he yells at both of them. He's angry that Rocky won't help him get a job with that same loan shark. Adrian finally opens up and just lashes out at him, telling him that she's done everything for him. And when he continues to yell at her, Rocky has had enough, grabs him, and Paulie just breaks down crying. So when Rocky checks on Adrian, she's just ready to leave her brother, ready to move on and stay with him. This is followed by more training, with Paulie showing up a little later. Maybe he's kind of on the mend, asking if maybe he can advertise Rocky's name. And then we get to da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Can't give me a copyright claim if I just sing the music. And Rocky goes through that epic training sequence with Bill Conti's music playing, running through the market, getting that random orange. He does some insane push-ups and sit-ups. He's slamming more sides of beef. And then he takes off running insanely fast past the shipyard. And then it's a scene everybody knows. He takes off up those stairs of the Art Institute. One of the most thrilling scenes in all of cinema. Gonna fly now indeed. I love it. It's such an amazing moment. So we're getting up close to the final fight. And just prior to the match, Rocky just stands there alone in the ring, just alone with his thoughts. A little bit later, he confesses to Adrian that he just doesn't know if he can do it. He's gotten this far, but he's just got that hesitation. He's going up against this legendary champion. Can he do it? Well, we finally get to the night of the big fight. We got both contestants preparing. And then the film culminates in this incredible and intense boxing match, in which Rocky shows that he can not only face a superior champion, but he's going to show the world that he can go the distance. All right, I won't spoil the ending in case you're one of the 3 people that has never seen the film Rocky. But if you haven't, you really need to do yourself a favor. Go out and watch this classic of cinema. Rocky was released in 1976. It was produced by Irwin Winkler and Robert Chardoff. It was directed by John G. Avildsen and written by Sylvester Stallone. Now, his story was loosely based on that of New Jersey boxer Chuck Wepner, who was an underdog who had gone 8 rounds with the great Muhammad Ali. And of course, Rocky's namesake comes from that of Rocky Marciano, the American boxer who competed in the 1940s and 50s, and who was the only heavyweight champion to finish his career undefeated. And there are some nods to Marciano in the film with his poster hanging up in Rocky Balboa's apartment. At one point, it's even complete with a Santa Claus beard. The film was made for only $1.2 million and was shot in only 28 days. And it would go on to make over $117 million. It would win 3 Oscars, including Best Picture, and would lead to 5 sequels that would together ultimately earn over $1 billion. And I don't think that's even including the Creed sequels as well. And let me tell you, while researching Rocky, there is just so much fascinating trivia and background to the film. I mean, I could literally spend hours trying to put it all into this video. But what I will point out is just some of the highlights that, as you read some of the background of how this film was made, you realize that they created this movie with a limited window of time and just a shoestring budget. And they found some really clever ways to cut corners that I would argue added more to that sense of authenticity to this film. Little things like the fact that most of Rocky Balboa's wardrobe in the movie came directly from Sylvester Stallone's own closet. They also incorporated what was described as guerrilla filmmaking, with director Alvinson just driving around Philly in a van with Stallone and a cameraman inside. And if they found an interesting location, the director would just tell Stallone, "Get out and jog." You know that famous scene where Rocky is running through the busy marketplace? They did this in one take with real vendors and customers. They were just oblivious to what was going on. There's that famous scene where the guy selling fruit just randomly tosses an orange to Rocky. And this was completely on the spot, with the guy having no idea that this was Sylvester Stallone and that this would be brought into a film one day and seen by millions of people, you know? It's filmmaking like this that just helps contribute to that authentic feel, that realism. Like, this is a genuine guy running and training in Philadelphia. You know, on my channel, when I watch old movies, I frequently will mention how I love things like location footage in old films. And let me tell you, Rocky is just a treasure trove of location filming. But not just glamorous Philadelphia. These are more of the rundown parts of the city. Streets lined with trash, graffiti, noisy trains, smoke and steam, and at times even just that faint drift of snow. I mean, it's beautiful. And all of those authentic details, they just add so much to the experience of this film. As the film begins, Rocky inhabits this grimy, claustrophobic part of Philadelphia. You know, we see Rocky, he's in this filthy, smoky boxing ring. He's only there fighting for a few bucks before a small handful of people who don't really seem to care all that much. He gets a few bucks from his beating and he leaves for his shabby home along these trash-filled city streets. His home life is dreary. He comes into an empty room that just looks cold and sparse. And he's got nobody there but his turtles that he talks to. You know, Rocky is one of those films where from the very beginning to the very end, your interest is just vested completely in this hero, this underdog hero. You know, a lot of times you watch a film and the hero will be there, but you know, maybe he gets overshadowed by some of the other characters, some of the other actors, or gets buried in a convoluted story. That never happens here. This is, from start to finish, the story of Rocky. And I found that you never lose interest in his character, and you never stop believing in him from the start to the very end of the film. And Stallone is just fantastic in this film. He's this chatty, friendly character with a big heart. But in a lot of ways, he's uncertain of himself. The question becomes, can he ever become more than just a bum, but make it big enough to go the distance? Not necessarily becoming the champ, but to stay on his feet long enough with the champion to prove that he can do it. Prove it to Mickey, to Adrian, to Paulie, to all his friends, and to himself. Rocky does this mob collection job on the side, but he's a big softy. And he seems sympathetic to these people that are struggling to pay these bills. He's not the type of guy to break someone's thumbs. He tries to do the right thing, like helping home little Marie, and yet he gets treated like dirt and called those harsh words like creepo. And when he finally gets that shot, that undeserved chance to go against the champion, and he trains with Mickey, with Adrian's love in his life, even before the fight, we see he's rising above his environment. The sky is open and blue, and he's ready to go that distance. And of course, a big part of the film is Rocky's romance. Now, Talia Shire as Adrian is just wonderful in this film. And it's a character I find so believable, so realistic. From the first time we see her, she's this extremely shy, introverted woman. She's working at a pet store. As the story unfolds, and we learn more of her background, you understand that a large part of why she's so enclosed like this, just isolated from the world, it's due to a life spent with her overbearing and abusive brother, Paulie, played by Burt Young. When Rocky shows up and pursues a relationship with her and helps her to see herself as someone special, someone important, it's at this point that she builds the strength of character to finally stand up to her overbearing brother. I mean, yeah, when Rocky's there, he could punch Paulie through a wall if he needed to, but he doesn't. It's with Rocky having given her a sense of self-worth that this is enough for Adrian to finally stand up alone, stand up to her abusive brother. And when she does, this is enough for her to just break the guy. And, Burt Young is just fantastic here. And, by the way, we would see a much different depiction of the relationship of Rocky and Paulie further into the Rocky films. Notably, as you get up to the film Rocky Balboa in 2006, a sequel that takes place some 30 years later. I don't want to drop many details about that because I'm really getting ahead of myself. But that story more closely explores the friendship and relationship between these two many years later and what it's come to. And I have to make mention of Rocky's nemesis in this film, Apollo Creed. When I watch and review films on my channel, I frequently make mention that some of the best films I discover are the ones with a clearly defined, engaging, and fascinating antagonist. And that's definitely the case here with the character of Apollo Creed, expertly played by Carl Weathers. In many ways, he stands out to me as one of my favorite adversarial characters of all time. In terms of the nuance of his character, he's not just a bad guy in the film, but we see him depicted here as a shrewd, entertaining, and confident champion. Maybe a little too overconfident and arrogant, and that, if anything, could be his undoing. So Carl Weathers is just perfect in this film. He's got that showmanship, the flair, the quick wit in his interviews. He's just so entertaining in this film. And yes, he's the villain, but he's so larger than life and likable that in a way, you kind of want to see him win as well, I love how it's ultimately his idea, almost out of thin air, as he's just leafing through a book of boxers' names, that he pitches the novelty of a match with an underdog. And he finds the Italian stallion that captures his attention. And little does he know that this guy is going to turn out to be one of his greatest challengers ever. As mentioned, pride seems to be Apollo Creed's kryptonite. In one of my favorite scenes of this film, you have Apollo, he's in his office, oblivious to the TV news story about Rocky's training. Apollo is just off in his own world, tending to business things, but we see Apollo's trainer, Duke, actor Tony Burton. He's there, carefully watching the television. He's studying Rocky as he's in that meat locker, demolishing sides of beef. Now, Duke gets it. He's got his attention on this underdog. He's studying him, and he can see that this guy might be trouble. Duke is a little more aware that Apollo might have a genuine challenge on his hands. He's like, "Hey, champ, you better come and look at this boy on TV. I think he means business." Yeah, for sure. Now, without giving much away if you haven't followed all of the saga of the Rocky films, I do like the fact that Duke returns in Rocky IV in a very important role. But I won't talk much about that. Again, you need to see that film for yourself if you haven't already. So yes, you can see that Apollo Creed was indeed inspired by Muhammad Ali. Stallone has mentioned that Ali's charisma and confidence and boxing style played a big part in influencing the character of Apollo Creed in the film. In thinking about it, there is a very brief reference to race in the film, but I will be honest, I don't think that really played much of a part in this film at all. I look at the conflict between the two and I don't see the race issue here. Rocky is just a guy who wants to go the distance in the fight against a champion. Apollo is just a guy who wants a quick showcase to put this chump down just to build up his popularity. The film builds to their big fight, and eventually we do see both men, at the end, have a mutual respect for one another. The film shows the progression of Apollo viewing Rocky as just some random name from a book, all the way to seeing him as a legitimate challenger that won't back down in that final fight. To ultimately someone he respects as a worthy competitor. Enough so that he's willing to face him again in the second Rocky film, even though in this film he says, "I don't want a rematch." And the boxing sequences in this film are just amazing. They can be a little bit brutal too, the cut me Mick. So, I usually keep the videos on my channel fairly clean, fairly PG, but just be warned that the boxing sequences can be a little bit intense in this film. John G. Avildsen directed Rocky, and the look and feel of the film is just so authentic. And his filmmaking pairs so well with the music of Bill Conti. I mean, to me, hands down, this is one of the greatest film scores ever. And it's worth listening to isolated from the film as well. You can find the album on Spotify. You got all of that great music, the heroic fanfare, of course. But there are also beautiful and subtle tracks like Philadelphia Morning that capture that kind of cold sense of hopelessness as Rocky starts his training, or the track Alone in the Ring that paints that picture of Rocky's uncertainty that he can even win this fight. So director Avildsen really had a thing for films about the underdog in a fight, as he would also direct the 3 Karate Kid films as well as Rocky V. Now, Rob, is Rocky really a Christmas movie? Well, you might think this is a stretch, but I'm going to share my thoughts on why I think that it is. And it's not just because it's a film that is set around the holiday season and includes some ambient decorations here and there around Rocky and Paulie's places, or the fact that they're watching a Christmas movie on the TV, or that Rocky and Adrian are ice skating, which you kind of associate with Christmas time. Rather, what I see with this film is what we usually associate with the holidays, the importance of family and relationships, even including fractured, troubled relationships as we see with Adrian's relationship with her brother Paulie. They've got the holiday dinner that ends in fighting and even a turkey getting tossed through the air. And, I also look at something like Rocky's relationship with Adrian and how he brings her out of her shell. To me, that just seems to reflect the themes of love, kindness, and generosity we often associate with Christmas. If you look at the film from the Christian perspective, the message of Christmas is centered on the birth of Jesus that symbolizes a new beginning for humanity, and I can see Rocky Balboa's journey as one of a new beginning, a picture of redemption as Rocky is given this undeserved grace, this opportunity to go against the champion. It allows him to move from his past as a struggling boxer with all of his mistakes and his involvement with crime, and he's given this undeserved redemption through this fight with Apollo. And to me, Rocky resonates with this theme. And finally, if you look at the entirety of the film as maybe a depiction of the holiday season, the hustle, the exhaustion of family, travel, cooking, expenses, all of it, you get to the end of the film and it's all left you so beaten and bruised and weary that you get to the end of it all, much like Rocky, and all you really want to do is just leave it all behind and be with your sweetheart. So, okay, maybe it's a stretch. Those are my thoughts. You can let me know in the comments if I'm totally off my rocker. But what can I say? I love this film, and I love the Christmas theme that I see in it. Rocky is so much more than just a sports drama. It's this amazing story of determination, spirit, and redemption. Sylvester Stallone's portrayal of Rocky Balboa remains a timeless picture of the power of perseverance and a willingness to push yourself to go the distance while overcoming self-fear and self-doubt. Carl Weathers, Talia Shire, and Burt Young just bring a perfect supporting cast to this amazing story. Rocky is a cinematic triumph. It's one of the greatest films, one of the greatest Christmas films of all time. And it's definitely one worth checking out. Merry Christmas, everybody.